This session is going to be an exciting one. We're going to be talking about governance of SMEs. From yesterday's presentation, I think Daktari from USIU, we learned that close to 85% of businesses are small businesses, family owned. So it is an extremely critical component of the economy. We know that particularly even during that very difficult period we've been talking about, the COVID period, the pandemic period, it is those small businesses that kept this economy going. And I think so post-pandemic, we really want to be thinking about how do we support or improve governance of SMEs so that they can be resilient during such times. To take us through this discussion with a very powerful panel is Director Jane Mbatia, who is a wakili. She's over 20 years experience in corporate commercial law, cutting across all sectors, finance, banking, media, kila mahali. She has also worked out of the country, so she brings in an international experience, or rather Pan-African experience and perspective, having worked in South Africa in the public sector, but also in other industries like mining and media. It is my very good pleasure to invite Director Jane to take the stage. She will have a panel of three and she will introduce her panel. So let's give her a warm round of applause as she takes onto the stage.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure seeing you all here. We are looking forward to this part of the session. From morning, as the MC has said, we've been hearing about corporate governance, compliance, technology, and efficiency. And what we have been having in mind all through, and what we have in mind when we hear the word corporate governance, is big corporates. Okay? In the capital markets, in the Nairobi Stock Exchange, that's what comes to mind immediately. And obviously coming from the kind of structures that you've seen here, the explanations on compliance, explanation on technology, the large corporates come to mind. But as you heard yesterday, I was not here yesterday, but I'm made to understand, we do know that actually the small businesses are actually running this economy. 50% employment, small businesses. Actually, I think it's almost 98% all businesses are small businesses, and they employ about 50%. So that's actually a huge margin. I mean, that's actually the economy, the pulse of this economy is run by small businesses. Because I mean, the big businesses are very few. Kenya is an emerging market. So obviously we expect that the small businesses are the ones who run the economy. But we find that they are lagging behind. And that is why we think it's very important that we have this discussion. There are always various challenges that they are facing. That's why we are setting the stage for this discussion. So with that background, I can tell you that according to the State Department of Industrialization, section of paper number 5 of 2020 on Kenya Micro and Small Enterprises Policy for promoting micro and small enterprises for wealth and employment creation, micro and small enterprises provide enormous opportunities for socio-economic transformation of Kenya's economy. While the sector has received policy attention since 1965, it is yet to fully achieve its potential. So you can imagine we are lagging behind this lethargy, yet we know this is the backbone of our economy. Development of this sector, therefore, is central to the realization of the National Development Goals anchored in the Kenya Vision 2030. The sector is particularly important for providing job and income opportunities for economically excluded segments of the population, including the youth, women, persons with disabilities, and low-skilled persons who experience disproportionately high unemployment. This is not just for the youth, the women, it's for everybody. All of us are actually, most of us are under that sector. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my panelists who will take us through this important topic. And I'll start with my chair, Dr. Nelson Kuria. You can come to the stage. Dr. Nelson Kuria has received a lot of recognition for transformative leadership. He's an expert in corporate governance. He's the chairman of the CIC group and its former CEO. He's a board member of various organizations. Mr. Kuria holds a BA Economics and MA in Leadership, has 36 years in financial services. He's now retired, 14 years retired or more, or less?
Yes.
Yes, less. Sorry, Dr. Yes. So he's a guru in corporate governance, and he has, of course, served in the financial services sector. So he's very well versed in this topic. Next is the Darren Harris. Darren Harris, you can come up. Darren Harris is a public affairs professional with over 15 years experience in corporate and non-profit sectors. He's a specialist in international regulatory processes, regulatory compliance and governance, leveraging business and legal acumen. He's a lawyer by profession, a recovered lawyer, he says, no longer practicing. Yeah. He specializes in championing strategic initiatives to develop effective results, participating in critical decision-making processes. Karibu. And then we have Kuria Waithaka. Kuria Waithaka is my colleague in the legal profession. Kuria is a key figure in the growth enterprise market segment at the Nairobi Stock Exchange. He's a corporation secretary and the legal counsel. Waithaka's dedication to fostering entrepreneurship and driving economic growth and makes him a key contributor to the vibrant business landscape in Kenya. Karibu. To kick us off in these discussions, I'll ask my panelists to each give us a high-level thoughts on this topic of how good governance can enhance resilience in SMEs. We can start with Kuria.
Thank you very much, Jim, and my fellow panelists. Glad to be on this panel. Thank you very much for having invited me to be part of this very august gathering and panel to just share some thoughts around the aspects of SME and corporate governance. Yes, from an overall, overarching perspective, SMEs, and this was mentioned yesterday about, SMEs comprising, probably more than 85% of the businesses that we have in this part of the world, and probably even globally. And my thoughts are, and well, I guess it's an obvious fact, all these big players, corporate players, were all SMEs at some point. And as such, I try to look at matters from a perspective of, it's about the tiering of the kind of operations that these companies have. So you have your big listed companies, when you put it that way, the big players, they were SMEs at some point in time. So it's a case of how did they move from that SME stage to where they are, from a growth perspective, and what challenges may they have experienced then, and how did they overcome them? And I think that's what this panel should really be trying to discuss. As the exchange, the Nairobi Security Exchange, which I work for, this is a matter which has been on our plates for a while now, where we have entities that come to us and say that we want to raise finance, we're looking for an inexpensive source of funding or financing. How do we go about it? We'd love to play the big leagues, but we reckon that we cannot get there. So we have to become innovative in that regard and say, okay, we appreciate where you're coming from. You may not be able to get into a particular maybe tier at this point in time, but grow your way up, sort of work your way up. And one of the things that we did was to come up with a market segment within the Nairobi Securities Exchange just to cater for SMEs, known as the growth enterprise market segment. And what we did was to have a market segment, this was in 2013, which then has less onerous or more, can I say, relaxed requirements to come to list. And we did see some uptick at some point, and I'll probably talk a bit more about that as we go along, because these are just opening remarks. But then we then realized that even as companies then come onto the GEMS market, and we have a couple of success stories, and we talk about one or two in the course of this presentation. We then realized that other companies are saying, okay, we're still not ready to come onto GEMS. We don't feel we have what it takes to even come onto the GEMS growth enterprise market segment. What can we do in terms of capital raising and scaling up our operations? And then we came up with another, what we call an innovation, known as the Ibuka program, which was launched in 2018. Ibuka in Swahili, it's Swahili for emerge. So we're telling companies emerge and grow. So Ibuka, it's not a listing platform, we call it a hosting platform. Where we then say, we're going to come on board, we're going to handhold you, we're going to help you restructure your balance sheet, or teach you to structure your balance sheet, teach you about putting in place good corporate governance structures and systems. We're going to tell you how to make yourself visible enough to potential investors. Because at the end of the day, like for the exchange, one of our mission is linking capital to opportunity. So these opportunities are here, but the capital is looking for those opportunities. The opportunities have to be capital ready. So those are some of the. We have been talking about our EBUCA program and how it then leads, as a segue into the growth enterprise market segment, and in some cases even to the main, the alternative investment market segment and the main investment market segment. But it's something that's dear to us as exchange and I guess as the Kenyan economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Kuria, for those remarks. I'm sure we'll hear about those interventions in your presentation. Thank you. Harris.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Just a few thoughts on the marketplace, and I think the business environment in Kenya has always been very dynamic, which is a positive. Seizing opportunities as and when they arise. But I think over the last 3.5 years, it's become even more dynamic. One, as a consequence of obviously COVID, but two, obviously from the political environment has changed, taxation is forever changing and evolving, regulation is changing significantly, and unfortunately the good or bad news, depending on your perspective, is that's not going to change. If anything, that is also going to become more dynamic and accelerate further. Now, how do small and medium-sized enterprises manage this dynamic environment? Well, the good news is they have a history of managing dynamism, which is a positive. Big corporates were once not so big, and we can take a lot of learnings from them in terms of how they evolved and how they managed issues such as governance. But I also think that we can take stock in saying, look, it is a dynamic environment, but not everything has to change overnight. It's an evolutionary process, not a revolutionary process. And I think there's an old English adage, cut your cloth to fit. What you need to think about, what SMEs need to think about in terms of the current environment is, how do I navigate my way through this dynamism, but in a manner that suits the size, the scale, and the ambition of my organisation? Because I think from a governance perspective, you can go all in, which is obviously, gold standard. But at the end of the day, you can also take a much more metered and measured approach, which keeps you ahead of the curve, keeps you ahead of regulation, but at the same time manages your business, your needs, your time, and your expenditure in a way that is manageable and reasonable for the size of your business and your ambition. So I think there are lots of hints and tips we can take, both from history, both from bigger organisations, both in terms of our approach, and there's a lot of people out there, a lot of skills out there, more so than ever, that you can utilise to better grapple with the issues around governance and the dynamism of the market. So I think there's a lot of positives, but we have to understand this is a train that's already left the station. We just need to manage it effectively within the parameters of our own individual businesses as SMEs.
Thank you, Harris, for that. Dr. Kuria.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed. I will look at the subject of SMEs, one from a political economy point of view, and the strategic imperative of inclusion. We cannot talk about matters of development from a serious perspective while we are not talking about the mainstreaming of about 85% of businesses in our environment. We are talking about upwards of 15 million Kenyans that are involved in the SMEs. And therefore, from a political economy perspective, there is every reason and justification to raise the imperative of addressing issues pertaining to MSMEs. From a social point of view, we are talking about impact in terms of poverty alleviation. We are talking about wealth creation and we are talking about equity. And I think from an ethical point of view, we cannot be seen to be serious where we ignore the impact in terms of development spending that affects the greatest majority of the people in this country. And I think there are very good examples to borrow from how some nations have risen from a very low part of the least developed countries in the world to become upper middle and almost going now to the first world, one of which is India. As you know, the engine of development in India is MSMEs. And in fact, even some of the sophisticated technologies and products that we are seeing coming to this market are actually made behind people's houses, because they have come to appreciate that it is not the size of the factory, of the processing unit, but it is the efficiencies and the technology and even the platforms that are established to be able to catalyze the development in this particular sector. From an economic point of view, we talk about the multiplier effect. Spending 1 shilling in some of these big business and spending 1 shilling in the MSMEs, from an economic point of view, the multiplier effect is much higher and will lead to better development that is even wide, because the more you have people that are able, the more you have a bigger market. The market is determined not only by the number of the people, but the buying power and how easily they can be able to access. So for me, it is how we see this as a strategic imperative, how we see it from a political economics perspective, and even from social. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kuria. Now to start us off, Darren, large businesses appreciate the need to invest in strategic planning, while many SMEs grapple with this idea, especially from the financial investment perspective. What are the different approaches that SMEs, I think it should be SMEs can use to ensure that they apply strategic planning in a cost-effective manner? You can also talk to how more adaptable can they be to changing business scenarios?
I think I touched on it very briefly in my opening remarks. It's about cutting the cloth to fit. We know that the strategic masters, if you like, are the big international companies who spend lots of time and effort and money and resources developing and fine-tuning their strategies on an ongoing basis. Now, the principles of strategy and strategy development don't need to alter, irrespective of the size of your organisation. I think it's just the scale and scope to which you apply it that's the point of difference. So, for example, with small MSMEs, they need to think about where am I going? What do I want to be? What's my end game? What's my North Star? What's my destination? Then determine what their roadmap looks like. How am I going to get there? In broad terms. And build your vision and mission to suit the size of your organisation in terms of scale and scope. Beyond that, again, planning, right? Doing your internal analysis and doing your external analysis of the environment, trying to cope with the dynamics of this particular market. And there are plenty of freely available resources out there. Just do a Google search. In its simplest terms, we all know of the emerging issues from a macroeconomic perspective, whether it be exchange rates or inflation rates or unemployment rates. So it's to take into consideration those factors that have the potential to affect your destination. Not all of the factors. Again, it's about cutting your cloth to fit. And there are lots of economic issues and macro issues outside of your business that have the potential to impact your business. So, for example, what's the direction of travel in terms of exchange rates? What's the direction of travel in terms of inflation? What's the direction of travel in terms of regulation? Now, any strategy can be changed, right? It's not a fixed point that, in terms of the direction of travel. The destination's a fixed point, but the strategy itself, how I get there, is flexible. So I think we have to start small. We have to know where we want to get to. We have to understand what that journey looks like, including what that means internally for my business, in terms of employment issues, in terms of staffing issues, organisational design, on a small scale. And we have to use our available resources, publicly available resources, to understand the direction of travel of those factors outside of our control that do affect our business, like exchange rates, like inflation rates. The information is out there and freely available. And once we've got that, then we build our plan, and then we execute the plan. For me, the key to success is because that strategic roadmap can change, it's keeping your finger on the pulse, as it were. So constantly watching to see what is changing in that marketplace that has the potential to affect your plan, and then change the plan, tweak the plan to match the current environment. So again, it's all about scale and scope. I think the principles remain the same regardless of the size of your business. Because regardless of the size of your business, you still have an ambition. You still want to achieve something. If it's maintain where I am, great. If it's grow your business and move into market X, or I want to move from Nairobi to Eldoret and expand there, whatever it happens to be, you still have a plan, you still have an ambition. So it's about fulfilling that ambition, building that roadmap, but at a scale that matches your business. And the key factor, of course, is those external factors, those macro factors, political environment, the dynamism of regulatory changes. But that's easily managed, I think, if you do something simple like look at the internet. And I know that it sounds like it's simplistic, but we're talking about MSMEs. So we have to utilise the tools that we've got, right? And there's a lot of people, PwC, Ernst & Young, they all go out there and they'll say, this is what the environment's going to look like over the next 5 years. And you Google it and it's there, right? It's free advice. My advice is take the free advice and utilise it in your plans, okay? And that's the best way of managing those external factors. Just keep your finger on the pulse, keep checking those, and they will change. But if you use those free and utilise those free resources, then you're managing your business as effectively as you can. And that, to me, is the imperative, that you're constantly keeping your finger on the pulse.
Thank you very much. I think we have a lot of takeaways from that. I think comes back to what you said, cut your clothes to fit. It comes back to that. So the next question I'll ask is to Kuri again. The NSC has been at the forefront of supporting the growth of SMEs in Kenya. What do you see as some of the key governance practices that they must strive to embrace in their growth journey, the journey we're talking about, as they grow from one stage to the next?
Maybe I'll pick up on something, from something that Darren talked about, and also yourself, where you talked about the growth stages of businesses, and they need to know where they are at and where they need, if they want to, presumably they want to move and not get to that next level. Darren talked about, essentially talking about strategic planning. And it sounds like, it's a big word. When you tell an MSME strategic planning, and they'll say, no, that's not, we don't, that's Greek to us. But then you realize that at the end of the day, you need to have a plan, you need to have a plan and a roadmap. And know what stage you're at, and see, and try and put in place certain measures to get there. And I think what probably, one of the things we established, like I mentioned about our Ibuka program, One of the things, in talking to these companies that come to get, who want to be hosted on our platform, is that we realize that there's the knowledge gaps. There's capacity gaps, but especially that aspect of knowledge, and say, you mean I can do that? You mean that is for me at this level? So, like this strategic planning, almost like a one-man show kind of enterprise. They will still need to have a strategic planning, however rudimentary. And I think it needs to be broken down in a sense, in a palatable way that they can appreciate that is what all businesses require or have to have. Just like the big ones at the top there have, you can also have it at this level and scale up as you go along in your developmental stage. And me, a company, we found a couple of companies who are probably have some pretty good turnover. Even probably they've gone outside the realms of what an SME or even an MSME is, as per some of the definitions, especially within our context. And then you find that someone is at a pretty good place from a growth perspective in terms of turnovers, the revenues. But then they don't have processes and systems in place. And they sort of say, okay, what do I do now? Do I just continue? Not whether or not they continue operating as they did when, 5 years ago or 10 years ago inside the business. And then realize that no, things have really changed, and for a bigger size of business operation, you need to have policies and procedures and certain structures in place. Some of this would entail, governance. I know this is a governance, we're talking about governance here, but at that point in time, they need to consider having a clear governance framework. Usually, from a decision-making perspective, you'll find it's one person who would make those decisions in MSMEs and also SMEs. For starters, and they want to hold on to that, for as long as they can, because they sort of think, I built this from scratch. I wouldn't want anyone else to come into this space so that they're going to bring down this amazing enterprise and are brought to where we are. So, start. We like even through our Buka program, we start telling them that it's about time you start looking at governance. Democratized decision making to the extent possible. You don't have to lose. It's not about losing control. But you may not have a monopoly of ideas or knowledge. Have other people who will come around you as advisors, or would like you to have a board if you're incorporating yourself, and have other decisions being made, upon deliberation, so that at least you have you can see things from different perspectives. So that is one of the very clear things that needs to come into play. As well, an enterprise. Let me call it risk management. Let me not use the word enterprise, but it is enterprise, because when you put enterprise, it looks like a very big. A very big component where you need to have your Deloittes and PwCs, and so no offense to them, coming to put together that. Again, you talked about risk, knowing where you're at, what affects your business at that point in time, whether it's regulation, whether it's market forces, and you need to understand them and see how best to mitigate that. So risk management is to start in everything that you do. I mean, even us, in your individual capacities, in your family capacities, you need to risk manage. So let's tell the business people that. Again, that's a knowledge issue. Tell them that you have risks. Document those risks and come up with risk mitigation or management processes. However, let me use the word rudimentary, but at least have something in place such that you don't have your business process being wiped out just because of an event that you probably saw but you didn't know how to handle it or how to deal with it. And especially now that we're living in a very interconnected world globally, with all these macros, whether it's conflicts in Russia and dollar challenges and all. The Google started talking about. Find out how that impacts you. Probably too many people don't quite know what the connection is between your bottom line and what's happening at the global or even national macros. You need to have that link. It's about empowering people from a knowledge perspective to get to that space. Financial management reporting. Start at the lowest level that you can. Bookkeeping, and again, a lot of it has to do with probably knowledge. If you as a business owner, you think that you know everything, at that point in time, you're the everything, you're the be all and end all. Bring on board and somebody who has some accounts experience. You can even hire them on a short-term basis, on a contract basis, on an ad hoc basis, from time to time to look at your books and help you put together your books in a manner that is in line with international financial accounting standards, as much as you may not even do any form of reporting. But then with time, as you build that up, you then become reporting ready. And at some point you'll be, probably even getting awards for financial reporting. We have what we call the FIRE Award that it's a program we run jointly with the ISPAC, our Public Sector Accounting Standards Board, Capital Markets Authority, and now the Retirement Benefits Authority. You want, when companies start participating in this kind of award schemes, and they see companies that were there maybe 20 years before them, and now getting awarded, they say, they sort of realize I can get there as well. And they sort of start learning some of the best practices in terms of things like financial reporting. Embracing a strong compliance culture. Again, it's good to, any business needs to know what laws impact it, and try and start embracing the aspect of compliance. Of whatever laws, including tax compliance. In as much as at that point in time you may probably be exempt from tax, but you shall get into a space where you shall be paying tax, and you shall have to be tax compliant, and you shall be a good taxpayer. But you need to start learning these things from the very stage that you are at as an MSME or an SME. You start then. It doesn't mean that when you. I think there's a perception that the higher you get is when you start learning these things. But no, your point is about cutting your coat according to your cloth. Do it at that point in time, and then you scale up as you go along. And the last point, Jane was just with something also Darren also mentioned about human capital. Start getting the right people for the right job in your organizations. And I said again, maybe it's about that thing of democratizing not only decision making, but even the roles that you're actually playing. You don't want to be the manager, the accountant, the lawyer, the HR practitioner. Start delegating these roles. I know sometimes capital, money to do this, finance to do this may be a challenge, but start small. And I said you don't have to hire somebody on a full-time basis. So we could encourage SMEs and MSMEs to start doing these practices from as early as they can, so that when they grow, it becomes almost, it becomes a granular process, organic. It's growing organically, so that at the time when you are in bigger echelons of play, business play, it then, it's almost like second nature.
When we talk about governance, it's not for the purposes of doing governance. It's not about because we're compliant, we govern our business. It's about adding value to your business. So choosing the right people is about getting the right people in your business so that your business becomes more effective and efficient. Doing your financial reporting gives so that you're making a profit. Right? Managing risk is about reducing loss, leakage or fraud in the business. Being compliant means that you don't get sanctioned from the government for not being compliant. So all of these things, and we can't forget the rationale for governance, is about growing your business, fundamentally, absolutely. Now we hide it behind this word of governance, but it's about progress, development, of growing your business. Simple as that.
Thank you. Actually, that's the main point. It's not governance for governance sake. Yeah, it's governance because you want to grow your business, you want to be able to attract capital, you want to attract markets, you want to be able to have technology, and the rest of it. So it's not governance for governance sake. It's a rationale. So I'll call on Dr. Kuria now to just take us through and tell us what are some of the key impediments that these SMEs are facing in embracing good governance practices. What is holding them back?
Like they say, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. A lot of these people have not been exposed as to the value of some of these things we are talking about. And it is also a mindset that they think that these are far removed from them. They are only for medium-sized and big corporates. They don't look at themselves as enterprises that require some of these principles. Yet, these principles are universal. And as we have said, even some of the big corporates started as MSMEs. So the issue of creating awareness, and I think this is where I see government agencies, private sector, the banks, particularly financial institutions, are working together to see how they can disseminate this information at the grassroots level and in a manner that can be appreciated by this target group in terms of language. If need be, we have even to teach them through their mother tongues. We have to teach them through Kiswahili. And therefore we have to break down this myth that, these principles are for those big boys. They are not for us. And it is our own responsibility actually to help educate that bottom of the pyramid or the MSMEs. And the other thing, of course, are the values that we have embraced as a people. As you are aware, in Kenya, we are ranked among the lowest savers within sub-Saharan Africa. Why? Because we have become a society of consumers. Everybody, when they make even $1 million, they want bigger and bigger things. Instead of plowing back the money that they make as margins, plowing it back to enhance their capital, to enhance their volume. We've been making fun about counties where you find our own contractors. They get a contract like for 30 million. When they are given a mobilization, say, of 5 million to start the project, what they do is take 4 million out of that 5 million and buy a Range Rover. And a Stetson hat if they come from Mount Kenya region. So that in the weekend they wear the Stetson and a mkwajo, and you go to the big Nyamachoba places up there. So you see, instead of plowing back, instead of seeing themselves as enterprises that can grow because of the value systems that we have embraced as a people, they have become inhibitive in terms of our progress. And therefore there is need to have a move of educating people that enterprises should be seen in a big picture form, also for purpose, that you don't just live and work for yourself. There is meaning in also impacting other people by growing your enterprise so that it has impact in society. But we are so narrow-minded because of this consumerism that has gotten to us. It is me and about myself and I and the way I spend, because that is what will make me be recognized in society. If I have money, if I have a big enterprise but I'm not spending in big cars, then people will not appreciate me in society. So this has become a major impediment. And I think let us not assume that people understand these things. We will need to get down there and drill sense into them. That development does not come through osmosis. It requires hard work. It requires foregoing immediate gratification for future development and legacy development, and creating legacies, not only for our own selves, but even for the wider society. And therefore, there is need to think about how we are going to disseminate this information. Because some of them do it because that's the best that they know. So the issue of education, creating awareness, having extension services from other well-established organizations, looking into how, for instance, I'm a cooperator, and I know even these small enterprises, if they grouped together, became members of a bigger, institutional mechanism, they can be able to create economies of scale. They can even be able to access technology which cannot be accessed by each one of them individually. But if they come together, like they say, in partnership, the weaknesses are diminished and the strengths are amplified. So we need to teach people these very simple, aspects of life, that working together works. You don't have to die alone. You can live by joining other people. So these are things that we need to educate our people in MSMEs. And I can assure you, with the kind of entrepreneurial spirit that they have, if they were given this kind of empowerment, we will be seeing a better growth, a better transformation, maturity, even up to maturity stage. And it can also reduce the kind of mortality of these MSMEs that we are seeing. Because many of them will not go beyond even 5 years. Because the owners ate the capital.
Thank you, Dr. Kuri. Actually, to add on to your last point, they say that 46% shut down in the first 1 year, and thereafter it's a free fall. The survivors are very few by the third year. There's a legitimate concern that I don't think they're getting as much attention as they should, especially on a policy perspective. We are slow on this, yet we do know that they really are very important to this economy. I thank the NSC. I think they're trying their bit. I think we need more from other industry players. We need to find a way that we can assist the SMEs in whatever way or fashion. We need, of course, policy in place. We need to make sure that they're able to get financing, which is a key issue. And without governance, they cannot get there. You go to the bank, of course, the banks and financial institutions, they are very stringent compliance regulation rules, which they are not able to. So we need to find a way or policy that will ensure that they're able to at least get capital to start up and to put in place all the systems and processes. But I do thank my panelists, and I want to probably open the discussion to the floor. We can take some few questions.
There is an important role the businesses like the one I run, we call ourselves business advisory service providers, play, because you find that like those MSMEs may not even be represented here to be able to pick up their mind. For some reason, whether it's accounting, not the big four, the smaller ones, I've always wondered why a lot of interventions we see to support MSMEs don't include financially and technically supporting business advisory service providers that are able to interact with the many SMEs. Because I feel that's a key intervention. And even when we've seen donors or government come into place, they are going directly trying to support. Let me just raise that issue. The other thing is, I just want to say, I've studied family businesses a lot, and I've seen the great weakness is intergenerational transfer, because all large, 99% of large businesses have been built over 20, 30, 100 years. And that's, and we've not seen any intervention on that to help businesses move or transfer from one generation to the other. If you talk of a big firm like Barclays, KCB, it's many generations of managers who've come and left. And for that, I came up with a solution. I've written a book on it called Wealth Beyond Generations, Strategies for Intergenerational Wealth Transfer. And governance is key part of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, succession planning, thank you. It's something that interestingly during the break we discussed that with some of the panelists. And yes, we realize that's a big challenge for a number of businesses across the board, by the way, not just MSMEs, but even SMEs at various growth stages.
Yeah.
You'd be surprised even some of the larger corporates, especially which are family-owned businesses. And it's a conversation that has been on the table, especially in the last 5 or so years. Because as you have generations, as you have a generation that's now changing, the business is changing hands from one generation to another, maybe the third or fourth generation. It will have, it has evolutionized. I was like that. It has evolutionized over the years. New dynamics have come in. You probably need new ideas, fresh ideas, but you still find that the structures still remain the same in terms of decision making and management. And we have had, even as the exchange, we have had forums with various family businesses, including an association of family business enterprises. And we tell them as we engage with them, we say, what are the challenges that you're facing? For instance, why not come to the market? That's one way of safeguarding, ensuring that a proper transition and succession planning happens. And they'll say, we are wary of losing control ownership. After all, we have made decisions in this company for the last 50 odd years, and we're growing. So why should we democratize decision making, and have a room of 1,000 people who we have to report to when 5 of us could have made that decision, and that's, so it's a bit difficult to crack that one, but again, you say like, look, again, but you want your business to be sustainable. At some point, your dependents or those, those come in, your descendants may not want to take up the business. I know, allow me to use an example, like, maybe in the, like Asia, parts of Indian extraction, like in places like the UK, where, you had the mom and pop shops, the corner shops, which have done pretty well over the years, and the parents are now, they're now, at a senior age, and now they want to transition. But the children, they're taking them to the best schools possible, the London business schools and all, and who have gone to study corporate finance and want to work in bigger businesses, So then what happens to that kind of business? It could easily tank just because of that issue of succession planning, again, or having different interests which are not aligned. Because the mom and pop still want it to remain a candy shop on the corner. But they are looking at bigger things, or either working for large corporates, multinationals, or even certain other businesses, like maybe in the tech space, which is very different from selling candy and croissants, that kind of thing. So that's a challenge that's been faced in that part of the world, for instance. And again, it's going to start happening, and it's happening here as well, in Kenya and probably in South Africa as well, certain generations of, especially certain businesses which started off, whether in the 1900s and 1930s, have grown into pretty big businesses, some of them. It's time to pass on the mantle because, the patriarchs are now becoming rather old, and they may not be able to manage certain aspects, but those coming after them don't know to handle. So what's the best thing to do? Why don't you democratize the ownership? Sell off some fruit. It's not about losing control. You don't have to, I think there's always a misconception that you need to give away 100% of your business to somebody, as you invite somebody to come in. Give 20-30% and just have strategic investors come in, democratize the ownership. That way you have more people being involved in your business. The more you democratize ownership, you also create a new caliber of stakeholders who will go and market your business as well, and tell people that that's a place to be in. And they can also hold you accountable, as much as sometimes you also don't want to be held, as a business owner, you don't want to be held accountable, but just open it up a bit to be held accountable, to be asked questions. So that you can then be transparent and then, if possible, where possible, put in place certain controls or certain practices that ensure sustainability of the business. So that's actually a big question right now for many family businesses, and I think they need to start addressing these matters and to know that it's okay to cede some ownership. Yeah, you don't necessarily have to cede control. Then a very quick one also just on succession planning. One of the other concerns we hear is that the tax. We're going to be exposed to the taxman, because now we put ourselves out there, and the taxman will come after us even more. And I sort of say, in the first place, you should be paying your taxes. You should be a good taxpayer. So it goes back to the same concept of, at every stage, you should be doing things right. Yes. Not to say that the big players are the ones who shall pay the taxes. I will not at my level. Pay your taxes, however small they are. Then as you continue, then it becomes second nature to pay your taxes along the way. So you have someone who say, we don't want to. We're wary of the taxpayer. There'll be a greater spotlight on us. But I say, be a good corporate citizen, and pay your taxes. And as the bigger you grow, continue paying your taxes. You may use certain mechanisms like tax avoidance, not evasion, or tax. They call it tax structuring actually. Or tax planning. Use some of those optimizing your tax. Use some of those mechanisms that are afforded to you by law, but pay your taxes. Other thing is the cost of compliance. I think it's also an assumption that there's an increased cost of compliance. I think one of the things we talked about here is that compliance and governance are not, you should see the end game, which is the value that you're creating in your business or adding to your business or is being brought to your business. Not just compliance or governance for governance sake, but you have to link that with the end game. So if it's matters of compliance, there may be some increase in compliance costs, but again, you should really be complying. Yeah. So again, it's an education thing, as my namesake, Dr. Krio said. It's about education. Do what you need to do the right thing at every level you're at as a business. Yeah, and then I'll scale that up as you go along. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kure. Any other comment on that issue?
The big secret to this is in the use of the word succession planning, right? You plan. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that that plan says it's kept in the family. You could plan to sell. Awareness and understanding and appreciation and education that when we talk about succession planning, never assume. Because a lot of the family-run businesses, the parents running the business assume that the next generation will take it on. And the next generation are assuming they're going to do something else, right? So communicate, never assume, and plan for whatever the ultimate outcome is, whether that be the next generation takes it on, whether it be that you devolve day-to-day management responsibility to your management team, or whether you plan to sell the business. Either way, in any of those scenarios, you're adding value to yourself as a family business, but also to the business. You're doing it justice. So I think it is no secret. It's education and awareness. It's never assume. It's communicate, and it's plan, whatever that plan is.
I think it goes back to the same issue that I was talking about, values. It is a question of the mindset in terms of scarcity mentality, that if I share, I'm losing. Rather than an abundance mentality, that when I release, I open my hands to receive even more. Simple as that. But it is a transformation of the mind that has to go through, but it comes from education.
Once you have proper governance, what the founders and family members sometimes don't realize is that they will get freedom. It's founders' freedom. So long as you don't have systems and processes and you don't delegate, you don't have a system, you will be stuck into your business, you become a slave of your business. So what this does, governance releases you from your business, it makes you have what we call founders' freedom, because you have systems and processes. And you stop having an insular kind of leadership. Insular meaning you're just within yourselves, within the family. There are so many dynamics that happen. And these are the various impediments to growth of these enterprises. Any other question? Thank you. Dr. Kamau?
Thank you very much for those presentations. Let me just make a contribution and then finish with asking a question. And I want to make a contribution with regard to succession. Just like I said, we talked yesterday, and for those ones who are with us, when you're looking at succession, a lot of time we don't look at the personal health of the leadership of that organization. Usually, the organization or the MSC will start with a healthy person, but as time goes on, because again there is no proper governance structure, the health of the leader starts failing, and it starts failing gradually, and that affects the quality of the decisions those people make. And therefore, I think one of the lessons that we should take here is that even as we learn how to govern as such a business, it's important to be aware about the importance of personal health as a leader, and even those who follow. That's my contribution. My question is, so far we have talked about challenges of running small businesses, but there are times when a business will start and it will grow very rapidly, and so rapidly, and the owners don't even understand why their business grows so rapidly. And there's a danger in that, because rapid growth denies the owners, the lessons necessary, so that when they start failing, they can know they are also failing. So in the same way that they don't understand why they are succeeding, when they are failing, they won't know until they are down there. So the question is, how do we advise people? How do we get advice ourselves? When you start a small business, it grows so rapidly, it denies you the lessons you need to run a business successfully.
Who wants to respond to that?
I think it's a wonderful question, by the way, but also very pertinent in this environment, because we've seen many examples of that. And I think it's not an easy one to answer, clearly. But I think it's about use of resources, right? So with the right governance structure in place, you will identify that this is a risk to your business. And identifying it as a risk, you will be putting in plans, or you should be putting in plans to mitigate that risk. Whether that's be additional resources within the business, whether it be about management consultancy, whether it be about financial expertise, whether it be whatever it's about, you need to identify the risk and manage it. And that comes from having a governance structure in place which recognises every business has risks. I know what my risks are, and I know what plans I have in place to manage those risks. A lot of these SME businesses that end up in that position is because they haven't had the governance structure in place to begin with. So I think it's advocating the argument that we do need this governance structure in place from the micro enterprises through the small to the medium and beyond. Because it's a clear example of if that governance structure was in place, if you were managing risk, you would identify, you would see that risk, and you would have a plan in place to manage the risk. So I think it's a great advocacy for good governance and risk management, quite frankly.
Okay, thank you.
Could I just add something, Jim?
Yes, please.
Thank you, Dr. Kamau. Just a quick one, and I'll speak on something that Dr. Korea talked about, the issue of awareness. I think it's also an awareness issue. So as we have the governance structure, that's it. When you realize, yes, we needed a governance structure to take you through this space when you realize that you've grown so big and you don't know what to do next. But again, you see, the challenge could be that you didn't have that governance structure. You didn't know that you get to have one. So I guess the question is, okay, what do you do now that you're there? Actually, I think I alluded to that earlier when I said some businesses grow so fast without all these other processes. Somebody realizes, oh, we're here now. What do? We've become too big that maybe as one person, to your point about personal health, I'm unable to manage. What do I do next? I think it's okay. We need to have forums, and I think yes, government will be a big player in this. Government and various stakeholders, especially the financial, let's say like especially in the financial services industry, where we come together to hold awareness sessions, workshops for MSMEs and SMEs to tell them what happens in your various growth stages as a business and what to look out for, what are the potential pitfalls, what are the minefields, and how do you navigate them. But it has to be a concerted effort by various stakeholders in that space that one is operating. And within the capital markets space, as the key stakeholders in the capital markets, the CMA, CDFC, ourselves, and Kenya Association of Stockbrokers and Investment Banks, and now we have brought in the Fund Managers Association, we have brought in the RBA and a few others. We're now trying to see, okay, in not only investor education, but even, because we're not starting to do a lot of investor education, even leveraging on technology, like using various apps and all. But now you may uplift the knowledge base of the investors, but the businesses themselves are not ready for these investors. So we need to make the businesses also investor ready and capital raising ready. So you have various workshops and just create awareness and education as to your this space. This is what you probably need to do. This is how you can grow. You need to have that plan in place. If you don't have the plan, now put that plan in place and have a roadmap for how you get to that place. Put your compliance and governance structures in place, which if you didn't have them, or you had them, make them more robust to cater for what the future is looking like in terms of scalability and growth. So I agree there's quite a bit of work to be done, but for all of us as stakeholders, even, and I said, especially those in the financial services space, even the auditing firms or financial advisory firms, they should also probably get a space, maybe connect with the professional member associations and even associations like the IoT, and have this kind of workshops and invite MSMEs, SME players in that space, and just to create awareness and enhance the knowledge base and create an appetite for continuous learning and growth. And then now we all have, with our mobile phones, everything is now at your fingertips in a sense. So leverage on technology and have people know that you can always access information through this, and in that way, then knowledge is power. Embrace knowledge and grow with it, and it will hopefully, we'll get to a point where businesses will then say, okay, now we know what's the next step to take. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kuri. I hope that has answered your question. I know succession issues are very, very emotive. It's a main issue in this industry, especially for the small businesses. and I'm sure that discussion will be ongoing.
Can I add something?
I know we are running a little late, but you
Yes,
can add something, Chair.
I just wanted to demystify when we talk about education and awareness creation. Because we can even do it at the grassroots level in terms of networks that learn through experiential learning. Because when one entrepreneur gives an example and talks about their journey, it will be much more impactful than going to deliver a lecture about good governance. And that the people get to realize that the way they grow is part of their stewardship. And in stewardship is also how to manage windfalls when they come. It's not getting mesmerized. It is to know how to utilize that windfall, because windfalls don't come every other day. So I think we must demystify the whole area of education and awareness creation to get to the, to the grassroots using the simplest means and methods.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thank you for those questions. And we would want to conclude the discussion on SMEs. But thank you very much for listening, and thank you, my panelists. Thank you very much. You can take a seat.